So the presentation and discussions contain forward-looking statements regarding future events and the future performance of Solitron Devices, Inc. That involve risks and uncertainties that could materially affect actual results, including statements regarding the company's unaudited fiscal 2022 year-to-date results and the company's expectations regarding bookings, net sales, production levels, the completion of facility upgrades, the relocation to the new facility, and adjustments to the cost structure in fiscal 2023. We do encourage all investors to read through the risk factors that are listed in our most recent 10-K filing and those noted in any subsequent filings, such as supply chain issues that are currently going on. We would highlight the following factors that could cause actual results to vary from current expectations and forward-looking statements made today. Number one would be the timing of bookings. We continue to see a delay in receipt of orders, including our largest contract with Raytheon. As a reminder, last year, we received almost half of our bookings in one calendar month, in the month of December. So there's a lot of lumpiness in the receipt of our orders. So we expect that, but we just never know the exact certainty. We don't know with certainty the exact timing of receipt of orders, but we expect certain orders to be coming in the coming months. Second would be the global impact of the coronavirus and its impact on our operations and operations of our suppliers and clients, staffing levels, and labor costs. It's our belief that work from home has negatively impacted productivity at some of our customers, which is contributing in part to the delay in contract orders being received. And it's also contributing to preventing on-site visits over the last year and a half, which has really prevented our new product development, since we're not able to go out, meet the customer, and really have those discussions about what needs they have in terms of new products. We also have the unknown current impact of the Omicron variant. How that will play out is obviously an uncertainty. Number three would be the timing and size of orders from our clients, our delivery schedules, and our liquidity and cash position. So even when we receive an order from a client, from a customer, we don't control the size of that order. We can't guarantee what the delivery times that they will specify in that order, whether they'll allow early delivery or not, which is going to impact the timing of our revenues. And as anybody who spent any time with our company knows, our revenues are quite volatile and lumpy because of that. But we believe we have really significantly improved our balance sheet. We're able to withstand any modest delays on the front end related to supply chain, or even on the back end in terms of when we ship product to the customers. Number four would be our ability to complete facility upgrades and relocate to the new facility where we're meeting today within the contemplated time frame. What I would say to that is there's already been some delays. Costs are continuing to rise. That's just the nature of construction in this market. And it's particularly, we're seeing high increases in costs with copper, which is significant for the amount of power that we need to bring into the building. So you may notice in our financials in the past quarters, and even in this quarter, there'll be some scrap income from us having scrapped old parts that had copper and gold. So on the good side, we're getting that higher prices for copper, and our scrap income looks really good. On the bad side, a lot of that money is going to go out the door and due to increased prices on our electrical construction side of the upgrades. So fifth would be our ability to make the appropriate adjustments to our cost structure in fiscal 23. I would say our goal is to achieve nearly $1 million in the next fiscal year of cost savings as compared to our current cost structure. This significant portion of that will be from the elimination of rent at the old building. This year, we're already carrying the rent at that building where we're at, and interest payments here at this building, whereas next year, next fiscal year would just be the interest payments here at this building, and under accounting, we would have the depreciation costs. Hopefully, with the location of this facility, while depreciation is certainly real, things do wear down and all that. We hope that the quality of this facility is such that it maintains or increases in value. So economically, we won't really be having that same decline, in a sense, to book value. When you have good real estate, it should function that way. But in addition to that, we would also, because we're going to a smaller footprint, we're going to have gases and utility savings. We've already been going through kind of headcount reduction which Mark is going to speak to a little bit later. We'll have reduced insurance. We're carrying insurance on both buildings and things like that. So we're quite, at least I'm quite comfortable that we can, on a run rate, have $1 million of eliminated savings compared to the current fiscal year. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Jack Worthen, our VP of Sales, and he's going to give a presentation. Following Jack will be a presentation by Mark Matson, the COO of Solitron. And then after that, we will then open it up for questions and answers to either Jack, Mark, or myself, depending on the nature of the question. So Jack.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Mark, and President, and this is Jack, our VP of Sales. So we're going to walk through kind of an overview presentation, and I'm going to start off, and then Jack's going to walk into some more details. So we'll kind of let the whole thing go from there. So number one is kind of like what's been the overall strategic path, and we're going to walk through it in a real basic way. It's basically, if you look at it, kind of a simple chart, we had new, existing customers, existing and new technologies. When we started in fiscal 17 mid-year, that was when kind of the changes happened in August of that year or whatever, a little later than mid-year. Basically, first thing was basically an apology tour to stabilize the customer relationships. There were issues with customer relationships and delivery and fulfillment and all kinds of things. So that was the first thing. The goal at the time was, and we'll walk through some details on it, was extend the existing technology. The company didn't have a foundation for new technology. All the technology was old. And so what our goal was, two things: add new customers that needed the existing technology. We'll talk about what that means. And then add a distributor to help leverage and resurrecting these kind of older sunset fading jam transistor lines. So there's a whole category of products that are still used out in the market. If you go way back, Solitron was one of the suppliers of those on drawings, and we wanted to resurrect those lines. And to resurrect the lines, we needed to know how big they were and how big the opportunity was. So go to the next slide. So these are the products we're talking about at the time, and we continue to make and sell these. I mean, up in the upper left is fundamentally what's called a hybrid. And the mil spec, I'm going to bore you with some details, but that's 38534 PRF type 38534 device. Certain other specs apply to those. The other items like that are smaller might be a single chip, even the one with the big hooks and the bolt. That might be a single chip. That's a mil 19500 type device. And then on this one, the same thing. So you can see one of these has 4 chips in it, and some have many more. Some have a single chip. And you can see a couple things that are open. And we have examples over here for people to look at too. And quite often, these are fundamentally pretty old technology. One thing about power to keep in mind that's good for the company and really something fundamental, if you go into your house and you look around, have the outlets changed in the last 50 years or 70 years? No, they're fundamentally the same outlets. Now there's improvements, ground fault interruption, GFI plugs in the bathroom and kitchen. There's things like that. Breakers are better and other types of things, but fundamentally it's the same stuff. Same thing is true of Solitron's legacy in the power market. So our goal initially was to build upon that legacy in the power market. We were chasing a new, extending these lines. We had some fairly bad news fairly early after we'd gone off and won some new business. And DLA had sent us something that basically they were coming after the company based on prior performance to shut us down. So there were some fairly significant issues when we said we were going to resurrect product lines. So we had to work through that. And the good news is that those type of things are opportunities because DLA had us under a microscope. So the good news is they were all over us. They were in the plant. They were all over us. It also helped us to figure out what was wrong with our own staff at the time. But the positive is, when you fix and improve things and do way better, they were also watching that. Same thing with our customers. The customers were watching. So in a way, it turned it out for us in the end to be an advantage. So when we say we wanted to extend that the initial extend, how do we extend existing technology into new customers? Basically, the business had been kind of a trajectory of a cash out cow. And I'd even call it, cash cow was nice on the products, but it was a cash out cow. I mean, this thing was on a slow going out of business sell on old stuff. And old stuff can be relevant, but you can't just cash out, and not do something new even with old stuff. So one of the goals and a big part of this was bringing Jack back, who'd been at the customer before, and I'll talk more about that on some other points. But one of the things was basically existing customers, extend them. In other words, retain them, extend them over time, and extend them into new projects. And we kind of talked about that, apology tour and improved performance. The other big things that were kind of fundamental right away to fix the backlog issues were win a distribution deal. And we've published that. It's been out in the reports and things. The goal of distribution is to win a bunch of customers in a bunch, to go off and win a bunch of people in one fell swoop. And we did that. As I said, the other thing we got out of the distribution deal was they had intelligence that we didn't have, having kind of been pushed out of those markets over time for cost and performance reasons. The distributors know who's buying what where. So they know the old stuff. They know the stuff that's been sold. They know what's still being sold. And the other thing is they're willing to, if it's real, we could say, well, you need to place a PO. The PO is a commitment to them that we're not just running down a dead end road. So that was one of the goals out of the distribution agreement. And we were blessed that we were able to pull all those things off. And then we got the shock of the DLA letter later on. But that, again, turned out to be an opportunity in a major challenge. So after winning that deal, we had to go back and solve technical and relationship issues with DLA on those old products. The old products had to be fixed. It's an old house that was very broken down. And then the second thing was win new customers. Winning new customers with existing technology was kind of like hand-to-hand combat, street by street, block by block. It's taking Fallujah or something like that. You're battling every single block because there's not like one fell swoop. There's not something new. You got to go find this opportunity and that opportunity. And the second thing is you're in a difficult position. You're typically a second or tertiary, third or fourth source, and you're replacing a source and you're trying to pitch it, price it to get in there, and then promise that you're going to deliver. So you're under a fair amount of pressure. So that's kind of the results of that are kind of in the chart in terms of extending the existing tech with new customers. From 17, we ended, again, there was a management change halfway in the year. We were able to stabilize a bunch of things right away. But then the next year, you can see we went from the 7.42 million up to the 9.27. While we were on that trajectory of fixing the old house, you can kind of see where the next couple of years are. Similar sales, 9.38, 9.42, 9.24. So then the question is, what other things are we working on that we're able to go? And one of the goals is basically extend the existing customers with new technology. So I've got a customer in the pocket. I've won some new customers. I have to perform well enough to basically get them to extend with me as I move forward into new technology. So that's the bottom line. Okay, the top line, I extended and add customers. Now I got to extend them out with new technology. So extending customers, transitions your relationship from basically where you were in price quotes on drawings, which is what we were in 2017 and 2018, say, your price quotes on drawing fiscal year by the calendar year. Our calendar year is almost a full year off. So that would have been calendar year 16 and 17. Basically, you have to move from being price quotes on a bunch of drawings to something where you've proven enough performance to be new program design wins. So that's kind of a co-development thing. You come in with a proposal and they work, hey, that proposal looks good, let's work through it and things like that. The secondary thing was had to move from being a secondary or alternate supplier via more advanced technology to become a primary and preferred supplier. The last one was being invited to quote on a drawing versus, where, oh, here's a drawing, you're invited to quote along with 10 other people, to moving to where, hey, we're giving you a preferential call. You're one or two people that we're willing to talk about co-inventing, co-developing a design. And therefore you get to have inputs on the drawing and the specifications. And then the other things that we had to target as we moved to new technology was improving the manufacturing capabilities with technology, improving the testing capabilities with new technology. And then that all has to be supported by hands-on responsive customer service. So those were kind of the fundamentals of how are we going to extend new technology with existing customers. So that was kind of really those years of working on that. The good news is if you look at kind of the result in fiscal year 21, that's where we shipped the 10.5. And really it required building all those things. So in a nutshell, it's like, oh, we have an old house. The old house is broken down and falling apart. We got to have that mortgage and work on that house. And we're buying a new house, the new technology house, and we have to invest in that. So for quite a while, we were investing on two sides. Just like right now, we had basically rental payments and then the mortgage at the new building. So for the last few months, we've had that type of situation. So that's where we were trying to move, is we extended our existing customers with new tech. We had, and you want to be careful on that new tech, because new tech doesn't just like, oh yeah, no, I buy it and then I immediately adopt. It's not like consumer tech. Consumer tech, the new thing that's out, everybody starts buying, right? And they're sometimes like Apple might have trouble delivering their iPhones or something, you know, or some odd things. For us, it's not just that, it's the technology. New tech requires an adoption. So I mentioned the power outlets you have around in your house and you plug in, and you know, if someone comes in and says, hey, I got a completely different outlet, a completely different plug, it's going to be way more efficient on all your equipment. And I'm exaggerating that, but it's kind of like, well, exactly how do I do that? So there's a slow adoption curve. Now, in the adoption curve, the good news for us was, if you look at the results in fiscal 21, we booked 1.2 million of new technology in that year. So by new technology, what I mean is we actually had, for example, existing long-term customers that the companies had for years that we had improved our performance, and they said, hey, we're going to work on a new thing. We also took a new customer that we'd added, I think in 18, and basically sold them a bunch of new technology. So we went in with them with existing technology. They liked the results performance-wise, and then they were willing to work with us on new technology. So how does new technology look? You know, how does that kind of feel and look? If you look at it, you know, the strategy on the new technology is basically we want to get to the point where we can win a bunch of new customers with a technology suite of advanced product and capability offerings. And so sometimes it's not, for us, it's just not a product, it's an offering. What you have is you need to have a portfolio range that shows, oh, they do this and they do that. I'm in here in the middle. They could do what I want to do. Let's talk and see. So that's one of the things. And then the other goal about that is to try and get it to where, you know, it's more of a blue sky expand strategy. So we talked about extending. What we want to do is, if you look at a third axis, we want to expand. So extend is I got a customer or I got a technology I'm going to extend. Expand is a brand new customer on a brand new technology. It's a very different thing. So, and if you look at expanding, you know, basically if someone's going to build their business off of what they're doing, you know, expanding is iPhone move or Apple moving from iPods into iPhones. You know, that's a huge expansion, completely different animal. It's like they didn't just extend the iPods by making them smaller, the iPod Nano and this and that. They extended and expanded into new markets, new phone, new customers, and in one fell swoop gained a bunch of new customers. So that's kind of what expansion means. And for expansion, you have to have a product offering with performance essential to the application. So there has to be an application that you're filling the performance need on. You have to be able to deliver immediate samples. So for example, part of the new strategy, and Jack will talk in detail about it, is we have had customers that literally have ordered by credit card for brand new development where they say, I need this many in a month. And we have to have them available. So we have to have proven that that product works and already have samples that we built. We've actually had that just happen this last month, you know, so, and we've had a couple cases of that where literally it's a customer we've never dealt with, never heard of. They realized through marketing that we had this capability and said, hey, we want to see something, we want to test some out. So that's a very different animal. That's a lot more of a blue sky strategy. And the product offering, like I said before, has to be broad enough to be compelling to the target market. So, you know, if you only offer one thing, they're kind of like, well, that's not what I really need. You have to have an offering that's broad enough where they say, oh, I need something between these, or I need something just outside of that, but you're in the range. So you have to give them a range that they're looking at, not just one thing. So that's been it. And if you look at kind of what we've done really during COVID and during the shutdown is we actually at one point we have 23 proprietary offerings. By part numbers at one point we had half of our WIP by part number, not by volume, dedicated to building new products and running them and testing them and seeing how they would work and characterizing them. So during COVID, we were shut down by customer visits. They wouldn't come in. There were other delays, but the good news is we used that time internally with an internal focus to not only ship our orders, but also to be able to build new stuff for the first time because we did not have a portfolio and an offering prior to that of that type of stuff. It's been decades since the company had any of those type of products. And along with that, in that roadmap in there, to be kind of blunt, there's a fair amount of pain. I mean, one of the terms you've heard used is weed and feed. It's fire and hire. You basically, none of the engineers that were with the company in 2016 are there now. And literally 2 salaried people are still at the company. One's in a different role and one is more or less an individual contributor. So we really had, while we were doing that, to turn over the entire staff. Otherwise, we couldn't execute on new technology. We couldn't even execute on the old technology. That's why DLA was all over us. And so the good news for us is, if you go look at the chart, it's like, okay, we went from this thing where we basically had old technology. We had to extend that with new customers. We did extend it with new customers. Then you had to take some of those new customers and get them to extend with you into new technology, along with old customers that you rewarded their patience and you basically delivered on improvement and get them to extend over into, hey, new tech. And now we're at a point where those are the 2 axes this direction. We want to go a third axis, and how do we expand with all new tech going a new direction? And I'll let Jack, our VP of Sales, talk about it. One thing that's awesome about Jack and that I was very thankful for is that prior and during the time when I was coming to the company, I'd had a sales guy I was aware of from a prior company I'd been at and was talking to him. But I went through all of the notes at the company, and Jack kept great, diligent customer notes. And when he left complete updates on what was going on in Salesforce.com and things. And as I read that stuff, I'm going like, this is exactly what I want to do. Silicon carbide and all these other things. And he did a great job of trying to work it with the customers. We just had to be honest, fumbled the ball. And in fact, a little bit more on that, when Jack was there before, they won a Patriot program, the newest version of Patriot, Pack 3, and they fumbled it away. They literally completely lost it. They won it and then fumbled it away. And they fumbled away another program, Next Gen Jam, and a couple other things that literally they were in control of and had old stuff that just fumbled away the new opportunities. And so that's kind of a gap for us in terms of as we move into new technology. That generation of gap was missed. So there was a whole bunch of kids that weren't born. And so there's no family. So we're trying to start the family right now. That's the bottom line. So I'll let Jack talk about that in more detail, and then we'll go through whatever questions people have. But again, the 2 axes, we did the extending with new customers, call that incremental. We did the extending with existing customers on new tech, call that increment in that direction. And then expansion is really a third dimension. And again, the example I would use, not that it's the same animal, but I would use iPods and music and digital music players and then going to the iPhone, which is a whole different animal. So that's our goal, is to have a whole different animal within our segment and within our niche. So with that, Jack, I'll let you take it over.
Thanks, Mark. So I guess if Mark's starting a new family, I would be the kid that ran away from home and decided to come back after a while. I was with the company, I think 2013, 2014 timeframe, so under the previous management. And just Mark's comment, we did go on an apology tour, first thing out of the gate but it was nothing I did. I have to say that. It was the previous management. So, but no, it was a tough time. Mark mentioned, just want to talk a little bit about our key customers, and Mark had mentioned several programs during the previous regime. We had won, new contracts, and it really comes to the technical competence of the company. Our engineering staff, they couldn't execute on the programs, and we couldn't deliver product on these programs, and that was worth millions of dollars to the company. And sadly, they went to other vendors to satisfy that. And at that point, that's when I decided to run away from home. I didn't think it was such a great house to be in it anymore. When Mark came on, he convinced me to come back and said, hey, we've got a new vision. He had seen some of the work I had done in new technologies. And so I decided to come back, and he has really staffed the company appropriately so that we can move in a future direction with newer technologies. The strategy of the company previously had been, we're going to go to Raytheon, we're going to go to BAE, and if you have a custom circuit that you want, please let us know what you'd like. And typically, there's kind of been a shift in many electronics industries, not just the defense industry, but these guys are tending to like standard products more, right? Maybe multiple sources, because if source A doesn't do well for me, I can move on to source B. So that custom-oriented circuitry started to diminish, over the last 10 to 15 years, and we weren't keeping up with that. And that was one of the things that I was trying to push, and Mark saw that as well. The good news is that these are some of the largest defense contractors in the world today. And we do business with just about every one of them. And that getting that print position and being able to contract with these guys is very important. As new companies come in and new vendors come in, they're not as welcoming of new companies because of the approval process typically these defense contractors have. It's very aggressive, and they want to make sure that their supply chain is going to be there for them in the long term. We've been around for a long time. So we've got a great foundation to grow from. But the problem was we just didn't have any interesting new technology for them. So we missed some programs during that time period. And we've spent literally the last 5 years changing that and developing it. And I think Mark's done a great job staffing it. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about where we're going in terms of new technology. I'm not going to get deep into the technical aspects of silicon carbide, but basically there are new technologies emerging. Silicon has typically been the baseline of power semiconductor marketplaces and power semiconductor products. That has, over probably the last 10 years, begun to change. And silicon carbide is a newer technology that allows you to operate at higher voltages and higher temperatures. It allows faster switching speeds, which means lower losses, smaller external components around these power devices. So what does really that all mean in terms of using silicon carbide? So think of your computer, 30, 40 years ago, it's the size of a desk, right? And literally now we've got computers, in our hand on a cell phone, right? So power technology had a lot to do with that in terms of the universal truths of power are everybody wants higher efficiency, smaller size, and lower weight. And that has been true for the last 50 years and hasn't stopped. Interestingly enough, power to the home looks the same, but I can tell you that the power to these portable devices or instrumentation going into aircraft looks very, very different than it did 50 years ago. It's much smaller, much lighter, much more efficient. But what does that all mean? And why are these technologies moving forward? Well, give you a really good example of silicon carbide. Silicon carbide is in just about every electric vehicle made today. Tesla is using silicon carbide all over the place, okay? They're using it in the DC to DC converters, the inverters, onboard charging, and the EV charging stations. Well, why? The most important aspect of it, you want more range in the car, right? You don't want range anxiety, right? If you can only go 300 miles, then electric vehicles aren't so great. So this technology is allowing the car to be lighter, go longer, charge faster. So one of the interesting things about adoption in the automotive marketplace and how does that translate into adoption in the military marketplace? Ike, you probably remember better than me, but probably 40, 30 years ago, the military decided, gosh, we've been buying all these really expensive, high reliability components in metal packages, hermetically sealed. And there was a Perry initiative from the government that said, listen, we need you guys to really reduce. We don't need the $300 toilet seats anymore. And that flowed down right through to the electronic systems, right? We need to get less expensive. The automotive industry had literally perfected plastic technology, okay? And 30 years ago. And they made it some of the most reliable, robust product in the world. The defense industry said, gosh, you know, I'm buying these parts $100, $200 a part. The automotive industry is buying the same part for $5 or $10. And gosh, it's just as reliable as the high reliability stuff. So what we saw is a marked shift, and I'll just kind of go from metal, very expensive technology, to plastic, fairly inexpensive technology. And the automotive guys were really the drive behind that for the defense industry. Well, guess what? The same thing is happening here with silicon carbide, right? We've got the automotive industry adopting this, perfecting it. And what that means is it's going to translate into high reliability applications in jet aircraft, aircraft power supplies, high temperature downhole instrumentation, which who knows where that market is going these days, but they're a big user of silicon carbide. And then motor and motion actuators in the aircraft, right? So the aircraft industry is going electric, and silicon carbide is an enabler. Again, what's important in aircraft? Less weight, okay? Can I use that battery longer? And silicon carbide is one of those enabling technologies. And previous Solitron really didn't have enough technical expertise to capitalize on silicon carbide technology. And so Mark has brought in a staff of people that understand it, are experts in it, and now we're designing products. And interestingly enough, the COVID shutdown kind of enabled us to put a lot of R&D time towards building a product portfolio and a product line. As Mark said, you can't just come out with one product and think you're going to excite the guys at Raytheon when they go to design a new system. You really need a portfolio of technology. The other thing I want to talk about a little bit is, you know, these are some of the growth rates in the marketplace. Obviously, EV is the largest driver behind this. You know, we're going from about a $500 million market to a $2.5 billion market over the next 4 or 5 years, okay? Our objective is not to play in the automotive sector, but we're going to piggyback on the opportunities that are created by the automotive sector in rail, motor drives, UPS, wind, not so much defense. Obviously, they're definitely adopting it. Everybody that I talk to at the Raytheons, the Boeings, the Northrops are all looking at silicon carbide and beginning to use it now. So our strategy here is, hey, if there's a $2.5 billion marketplace, let's carve out a niche for ourselves so we can capture a percentage of that market. We don't need to be the 50% guy in that market, a $2.5 billion market, but if we can capture a percentage of that, we can certainly, you know, grow the company at an accelerated rate over the next 5 years. Strategy here is we're not manufacturing the silicon carbide ourselves. So is that a disadvantage or an advantage? In one way, it's an advantage because if we are a user of silicon carbide, and we'll talk about the products that they're going into, we can partner with the industry leaders here, and we don't necessarily have to be tagged to a specific fab or a specific vendor. And there's a lot of variety out there in the marketplace today. There's probably 5 or 6 core guys building silicon carbide wafers, and we can use any of those guys and really use the advantages of their technology to produce the products that we want and customize that and tailor it. So we've got a portfolio today now of diodes, Schottky diodes, MOSFETs, power modules. We can do from plastic COTS now to the full space qualified parts, and we'll do both standard and custom. And that's the important part. Providing the portfolio of standard products, the engineer goes, oh gosh, you know, that looks really nice, but if I could just have this and this, we could really use you in your system. And I can't tell you how many products over the years I've developed just going into a customer with a standard product and then say, gosh, can you make something just slightly different for us? And we've been super successful doing that. And that's the strategy here, again, to replicate that. Just a short, you know, bring you through the product lines. Again, it's a portfolio of products, and this continues to grow. We've got more products in development. You'll see on the two ends, those are the plastic type technologies. And in the middle, that's more of the high reliability side of the technology. We're one of the few guys in the industry that actually can offer both, from a plastic COTS part to a space qualified part. Not many guys in this industry that can do that right now. Our building MOSFET's critical to power architectures, power supplies, inverters. And so we've grown this product line. And again, we've got, I think, another 4 or 5 products in development as we speak today. One of the real focus areas is going to be on our power module area, okay? So what you're doing here is you're integrating a bunch of chips. Mark showed you very early in those. We've got these open hybrid architecture parts where you've got a lot of chips inside. These look very similar to that. And what that does is it really gives you a high level of integration. What does that mean? It means small size, right? So you've got high power density, high current density. You're providing advantages for the system architect to use and improve the performance of his system. The other thing, we did develop a customized module, power module. That package is a customized package, very robust. Talk a little bit about the competition. It also allows the flexibility. Again, we don't have to be tied to one vendor. Wolfspeed's a vendor in this marketplace. They're very big. We're tied in with Wolfspeed, but Rome's also another vendor, and we can use the Rome parts, United Silicon Carbide Technologies parts. So we've got a lot of flexibility to provide our customer if they don't like the performance of a specific vendor. A little bit of competition. So Infineon and Wolfspeed are probably 2 of the larger guys in this market today. Those are very similar type performance modules from our competitors. And you can see we're, quite a bit smaller, quite a bit thinner. So that means we're, again, in an aircraft, size is everything, right? Weight is everything. So we're providing a smaller footprint, lighter environment. So that gives the advantage for the designer doing an aircraft or a very high reliability application for power supply. And again, we want to emphasize the next generation of the technology as well. So we've got next gen module in development right now. This will be even more integration than the previous series that I've already showed you. Phase 2 will be further levels of integration to provide more functionality to the customer. And there's another technology that's also beginning to move into the space, which is gallium nitride. So that we've already started to develop partnerships with some GaN suppliers, and we've got some GaN material in. So we'll begin the development of that next generation series. Again, broaden the portfolio, get it very deep for our customers so that they want to engage with you on when they're going on new developments.